Hello, everybody. Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Okay. All right. I really appreciate everybody coming to this important meeting that we're holding today for the Law Enforcement Center and Courthouse Updates project. As everybody knows, the referendum is coming up very quickly. It's May 1st. And so it was important for us to hold an event like this and bring in some speakers that can provide you a lot more information maybe than what Sheriff Crooks and I have done thus far. And so they're here for you to, they're going to be talking about each of their respective areas, and we want you to feel comfortable to ask them any question and answers. So the people that we do have for speakers today, we've got Delbert Longley is here, who is the state jail inspector. We also have Northland Securities representative of Jeff Heil, so he can talk about the tax implications. And then also we have our architect firm that we had hired that has been helping guide us through this entire process, and that's Prohaska. So we have Kurt Field and Jim Class is also here. In a little bit, too, I'm going to ask William Barisal to go ahead and give a little bit of a talk also. To start off with, again, now is the time. We have done our homework to get to the point where we are right now. It started, and we say this in our informational meetings that Sheriff Crooks and I have held throughout this entire county. It was by Delbert Longley that did a report to the Board of Supervisors at that time back in 2013. And as after an inspection, he reported back that our current jail does not meet the needs of our staff, our law enforcement, of our citizens, and also our inmates. And so at that point, we knew that we needed to make a plan. We had to do something. We had to decide where we're going to be in the future. And so from that point, there's been various studies that have gone on. In 2015, there was also joint facility studies that had occurred where we actually even took the opportunity to see if we could do a joint facility with our Charles City Police Department. At one point, they went ahead and after the study had been completed and also the review of our current needs, they decided to go ahead and back out and see if they can maybe do something with their current location. So we went on as a county effort. So we have been having citizens committees join us to try and look at various options. The options that did come to us was the option, and we've got boards displayed that do show our design. It was an option one, a single floor plan that connects to our existing courthouse, and we'll talk about that design a little bit later. But that is the one that came in front of us as the Board of Supervisors, and that we approved and set the referendum date as of May 1st. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and have Sheriff Crooks say a little bit about some of the deficiencies and why we know that we need to do something with our current jail.
Thank you. And like Linda said, I do not use a microphone. And that comes from, I was a PE teacher at one point, so I'm kind of used to talking louder in a gym setting over about 35 kids. So I don't use a microphone. I would first like to start, I'd like to recognize a few people here. Brian, Pat, Travis, April, all with the Sheriff's Office. They've all been a great help to me during this process. If there's things that I couldn't get to, they stepped up and took care of it. And very knowledgeable on the jail setting. So one thing that I do like about Floyd County right now is that we are being proactive. We really are. In law enforcement, it's key to be proactive. And Floyd County has stepped up to the plate, and we're being proactive right now because of what Delbert said in a few jail inspections a few years ago is that, hey, we need to start looking at something. And Floyd County stepped up to the plate, and it's been a process. It really has. 5 years, almost 5 years now. And, you know, here we are looking at a bond referendum. So it's a very exciting time for a lot of us in Floyd County. But a lot of the deficiencies that we do have is that we're just running out of space. We really are. It's an older facility that was built in the 40s, and it's just not up to date. It really isn't. We're what you call grandfathered in with the state code, and we're not asking for a lot. We're asking to get up to standards is what we're asking, okay? The people that come into Floyd County, we are responsible for them. As the sheriff, I am personally responsible for them, okay? But Floyd County is ultimately responsible for those people that come up to that 4th floor. And William said something that stuck with me the other day. He said it's kind of inhumane up there. And it really is. It's kind of inhumane the way we treat people up there. But the way that we get by with it in Floyd County is we have a great jail staff that takes care of these people. They go there, they make it personable. They really do. They build a rapport with these people that come up to our facility. They work with them and they get them through our facility. Okay? So that is, I commend our jail staff very highly. We got a great jail staff and they do a wonderful job. But I'm kind of excited today to listen to these guys talk, and if you have questions, ask questions, okay? Because that's the key. People are out there, they want to know. They have a specific question they want to know. So ask questions. But thank you all for coming.
I had a question related to one of the comments you made. I realize there's a lot of other shortcomings in the jail, but you stated that we don't have enough room for the number of inmates that are held there. What has caused that? Our population is a lot lower than it used to be. Is the crime rate higher? Is the incarceration rate per capita higher than it was? Or why do we have a shortage of beds?
I think there's a lot of things that go into that. Crime rate is higher. We have a new county attorney who's aggressive. We have new probation officers. We have new judges. Everything that goes into that raised our level of inmates that we do have. And right now the court system is a little bit backed up. And we are holding quite a few people that are not guilty of anything right now. They're waiting to be seen in court or in trial. So there's a lot of different factors that do go into that. And one of the biggest things about that, when you get a lot of people, is your ability to separate people the way that you should by state code. And I tell people we have 4 cells up there. We could actually have 4 inmates in our facility and we couldn't take any more because of separations, but hates and biases and everything else that go into that. We have to actually separate those people so that things don't happen in those jail cells. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I guess to an extent, but apparently we have more separation requirements than we had in the past.
We do. We do. The state code, things change. And there's sight sound separation things that we really cannot take care of in Floyd County.
In that regard, is it safe to say that there's more jail population because the court system and the state is not properly funding or doing their job, and so the lack of the state spending the right amount of money, it's spilling into the taxpayers of Floyd County?
I think everything, I'm not going to pick on the state whatsoever, but I think everything does fall, you see the state cuts across the board. I think more and more does fall on the counties. It really does. And a big thing we're seeing right now with that, with state cutting, is mental health. Is more and more is falling on the county. And you're going to see that, I think, more and more in the future. And counties have to take care of things.
William, I'm going to go ahead and have you come up real quick and say a few words. He is representing the Bar Association here. And like I said, he had spoke the other night, and I felt it was well worth for him to come and say a few words again today like he told us the other night.
Thanks a lot. I actually hadn't been out in front of this, but they asked me to hold a forum last Thursday at the courthouse for the Bar Association. I showed up and I kind of rambled for a bit. And they just asked me to come back today and talk to you again. I guess here's the thing that I'm going to say to you. And the reason I said that our system right now isn't humane is because of my experience in the rest of the state. We are one of the few jails that is left that has bars. And now most people don't think about why that would be inhumane to have bars. But it's because the way that we have developed jails, we've made them a lot more modern, a lot more safe. Not just for the prisoners, which I know is what everyone is always worried about, making things safer for prisoners, but for the people who work in the jail. And the sheriff is too kind to knock the state. I don't have those allegiances. The reason I say that is because the poor thing about this is that every single one of our jailers, our sheriffs, and even our police who have to go up there, they are being asked to take on duties that they have never been asked to take on before. There's a lot more things that are mandatory arrests. There are a lot more things where they are asked to take on mental health issues. There's a lot more social work that they have to do. And our answer in this state has been, separate them for a night, put them in jail for a night, let's work it out on the next day, and then we'll have a trial a couple months later in civil misdemeanor court or higher. Because of this, the necessity for an efficient and safe jail becomes more and more important. Now, we'll deal with the other things of the state issue later, but I do know for the protection of our of our officers, of our deputies, our sheriffs, you have to have a system that is modern, where they have an ability to look at everyone without putting themselves in danger, where there's a system that's centralized, where they know that they can be aware of everything that's going on in those cells, and at the same time, not only can they protect the people that are in them, they can protect themselves, they can intervene when there's something going wrong, when they start to see flare-ups between the inmates, they can separate them, because we have a duty, and this is just the basic duty of civilization, to have a jail that is not only humane for the people that are in it, but protects the people who work there and works towards the one thing that a person serves their time and they can re-enter society, and that they're not bearing any sort of like scars from that experience, that they don't have some sort of horrible animosity towards the people that were trying to keep them there, that they are safe, and that we have done all we can to make sure that they serve their punishment, but then they are able to leave and re-enter society without bearing some horrible black scar from their time there. And the problem about it is, whether through purposeful actions of the other inmates or through accident, you have to have a facility that minimizes those type of ideas. And I'm going to turn it over right now because I've talked already too long for what I should have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray, and we appreciate that. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and Jeff and I could talk a lot, but this is more important to have the speakers here. So the first one up is Delbert Longley. So if you would join us. I'm not even going to tell you what to talk about because I'm sure you have all kinds of things to say. Thank you.
And if you don't mind, I'm not going to use the mic either. I've got a big mouth. So, first off, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you. Let me give you a little bit of background. I've got over about 25 years in the correction law enforcement field. I started off working in juvenile justice, juvenile detention. I was a city police officer. I was sheriff for 10 years. And I just started my 12th year being the jail inspector with the Iowa Department of Corrections. I understand what your jail staff, your sheriff's office is going through. I'm also a taxpayer. I will tell you that our county is one of 2 counties in the state of Iowa that instead of having a jail, they've got a temporary holding facility. And I cringe every week when I look at their local paper. Sheriff's office transported, sheriff's office transported, sheriff's office transported. They're transporting 25 miles each direction. Folks, that's taking that deputy or that jail staff at least an hour and a half on every one of those transports. I hate that. It is spending money that's going down the drain that we will never recuperate. And the gentleman that is talking about the Bar Association, let me tell you something. You as a county have a responsibility to have a constitutional jail. And jail standards that I'm going to get into here in just a little bit is based off of constitutionality. It is what we want to do to keep you out of lawsuits. You know why we have jail standards? Jail standards came into effect because of a 1978 lawsuit out of Scott County, Davenport, Iowa. In 1978, a group of 7 inmates sued on the living condition of the jail, and they got an out-of-court settlement for $5 million. Just think about that for a minute. $5 million in 1978 as an out-of-court settlement. That is absolutely huge. To kind of put that into perspective of where we're looking at today is this. Gas price in 1978 was an average nationally was 50 cents a gallon. What is it today? It's $2.50. So that's 5 times. That'd be like $25 million lawsuit. Okay? So you take that $25 million plus they've got a captain's position that by agreement of the settlement they can never get rid of. You know what that's costing them? I'm sure, guessing that is probably about a $85,000 to $90,000 a year annual salary plus a benefit package. So they're probably talking $150,000, $160,000 annually that they're paying out in salaries. That's a job that, to be real honest about it, our sergeant or lieutenant can take care of very easily. Okay. So that's where we've come up to the point where we've got jail standards because Chapter 356 of the Iowa Code, because of that lawsuit, was written. Now we've got jail standards. Jail standards were implemented by the code because they said the Iowa State Sheriff's and Deputies Association, the Iowa State Police Chiefs Association, the Iowa State Association of Counties, and the Department of Corrections were to sit down and develop some standards by which all jails through the state of Iowa, holding facilities and jails, can be inspected by. So we have some uniformity, okay? So that's kind of where we're at. My job here, I believe, is number one, is to keep you out of a lawsuit. If I can keep you out of that lawsuit, I'm doing my job. And how do I do that? Is when I come into your facility and I see something that's not right, I need to tell you. And that's what I've done. I've said, you've got a problem here. You have a facility that's not safe for staff. You have a facility that's not safe for inmates. You've got a facility that doesn't meet the public's needs. I'm not saying that we need to give an inmate all kinds of amenities. I'm not saying that. What I am saying here is you need to be able to provide their basic needs. You need to provide for a facility that your staff can work safely, effectively, and efficiently with. And all three of those things are not in your current facility, okay? When I just quickly look at the proposed plans that's there, I would say that you've got a very good concept. It's very good. It's very user-friendly. It is a concept that's going to meet classification needs. We're going to talk a lot about classification. You're going to hear classification, classification, classification. You realize that I could come up with probably 36 different classifications that you would need if you would go with everything that's out there. And part of that is, let's start off with this real quick. Males, females, separated. Adult males, juvenile males. Adult females, juvenile females. There's 4 classifications right there. Okay? Then you start going into those that have been sentenced to the pretrial. Those is likely to be a victim, over those is likely to be exploited. And we can go on and on and on. Now, first off, you're going to say, well, we're planning on housing juveniles. That's fine. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But what I'm going to tell you, from a jail inspector's perspective, and you as a county, I would hope would agree with me that I would give you the ability to house that juvenile in that certain case, okay? Because if you don't have that ability, then what's going to happen? You're going to be going to Waterloo or Cedar Rapids to your nearest juvenile detention with that individual that has been adjudicated to adult court, and you're going to be paying $150 to $200 per day, whereas you could keep them here. By policy, you may say, we're not going to house any juveniles. That's perfectly fine, I don't care, but when it comes down to that point that you have that adjudicated one, and it will happen, I'll guarantee you, you're going to need to have that ability to do so. I want to give you that options, okay? Your classification absolutely is very, very vital. Safety of your facility. Right now, April and the staff, that they basically are watching the offenders, the inmates, often monitors. They don't really have a lot of one-on-one viewing of that, except for when they actually go through, unlock a door, walk through that door, and go around. You know how much bad stuff can go on when they got their back turned to that? A lot. I tell you what, offenders, when they're incarcerated, are the major manipulators that there is. They know how to manipulate individuals. They will manipulate themselves and their fellow cellmates, okay? That is just huge to the safety issue that you've got, okay? Talking about the bars that's there. That is a suicide tool waiting to happen. And how many times do we see that? I can show you probably over 500 cases in this last year throughout the state of Iowa where we've had some type of self-mutilation or suicide attempts in our jails. Floyd County is not exempt from that, folks. In fact, you're probably as susceptible to that as any, okay? Safety as far as assaults. You know, the type of system that you've got there, staff can be assaulted so easily. They can reach through the bars, they can punch somebody, they can throw urine, they can throw feces. and anything else on them. You have no control over those inmates. You really don't. Yeah, they may be locked in a cell, but you know what? You don't have a lot of control over that. You need to be able to address that. One of my main concerns is how is staff going to be able to operate that facility safely? And right now they can't do it. Okay, it's dark. We probably, to be honest about it, I haven't mentioned this a lot in the inspection letters because I know that where you guys were working at here and giving you an opportunity to make corrections. Your lighting in that facility is not anywhere close to being. You know, to increase the lighting in that, you're probably going to be talking a $25,000 to $30,000 project just to start. Okay, why do we want to dump $25,000 to $30,000 in that if you can build a new facility? If you do get that, that's a waste of money. That's a total waste of money. Okay, I'm letting some things like that just kind of go until we see where we're at. Okay. And I'm not saying this to be threatening, I'm just telling you some facts here, folks. I want you folks to decide what you want and what is going to be best for Floyd County. I can come in and I can say, nope, you're done, we're going to do it my way. But is that going to be best for you? No. And to give you a prime example of that, and here again, I don't say this to be threatening, I'm just telling you what can happen. We shut down a jail this year. So we need to be aware of that. Warren County, NOLA, their living conditions was not a whole lot worse than what you guys have got, to be honest about it. We shut them down from DOC, coming in and said, you're done, we're not going to go with this, and they're either going to have to go in and do a major renovation to their existing facility, they're going to have to build a new facility, or they're going to have to farm out. They're farming out 30-some inmates a day at $50 a day and traveling 100 miles round trip. Do the math, folks. That is not a cheap solution. So that kind of gives you a real quick, brief summary of what I've been seeing and looking at. I understand there's a tour of the facility this afternoon. I'll be around for that. If you've got any immediate questions for me, I'll be more than happy to address them, unless somebody wants to move on further.
No, really, now's a good time for anybody who has a question. And Delbert, go ahead and ask away.
Yes.
The number one objection I'm hearing is to the size of it. Can you speak to why this size is probably right for our community?
I don't know that I can really give you a good answer to that. I would say that probably would go back more to the Prochaska folks, to be real honest about it. I will tell you that what I'm seeing for, you're talking 32 beds, I don't see anything less than 25 beds of new facilities that's being built, okay? That is a bare minimum, okay? I'm looking at, you got, I think, 7 different pods. You know, realistically, and like the sheriff said, you could have 7 different people in there and you could be full, just depending on the classification of it. 7 pods is going to give you enough pods to be able to do classification on a regular basis. Chances are you having 7 people in there and 4 to be full, probably not real good, but I mean, it could possibly happen as well. So I think your 7 pods is probably very adequate for the size of the community. You're talking 32 beds. I don't think that is out of line by any means at all. But how they come up with that number, I would have to go back to somebody else to
tag on that.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Not really that great of a speaker, but I'm with Prochaska & Associates, Kurt Field. I'm typically an architect and a project manager, but our firm did a statistical analysis. Our goal was to decide, or help you decide, what size that should be. We have a guy in the office that's really more of a statistical geek than an architect, I think, and he's perfect for this, Zach Swoboda. He's been here a time or two. He's evaluated the records made available to him for average daily population and trends. We do 2 studies, and if he spoke about it, it'd be more geek speak maybe, but with me you'll get maybe a simplified version. But he looked at what you guys have historically had for a jail population going back and imagining that trend going forward. That's a pretty shallow curve. Your size doesn't necessarily go up a lot because of that analysis alone. But he said that's wrong because if you leave it just to that, because the influence of the national trend, you know, decisions made in Washington, decisions made at the state level, decisions made in larger communities that impact smaller communities, tends to increase arrest records, tends to predict a rising jail population on its own. So rather than say you should follow that alone, we've blended the two studies. The blend produces this 32. The only other issue that I would say is of an impact is you can't classify now appropriately. So you would have to have, if you just took your current population, those that get arrested on an average month or an average period of some length, if you tried to classify them, you would have to have more beds than the people because you're fully classified at 80% of capacity. You can't take any more because you can no longer separate them properly. We've heard people say in other facilities, we have room for 15 here right now. If we hit 12, we got to start shipping because we can no longer separate men from women. We can no longer separate kids. We can no longer separate the violent ones from the folks that just drank too much, that sort of thing. So classification is the other issue.
Any other questions?
What's the trend that you're seeing statewide for detainees that are incarcerated that have a mental health issue?
Mental health is a nuts situation. It's skyrocketing. It is skyrocketing. That's the simple answer to it. We're seeing more and more individuals coming in with mental health issues. We're getting individuals that's been incarcerated, that really don't have any business being in jail. They need mental health, but they're there, and we got to have some kind of classification for them, and it's a major issue.
I have a question for the architect. Was there anything factored into the numbers based on potential need or opportunity to house inmates from other counties that are overfull or can't meet their requirements? Or is this just going to handle what we need?
Well, there's kind of an indirect, again, I'm rendering an opinion. Nearly everybody that you talk to after you have a thorough conversation says, we're going to do a bond issue. We don't want to come back and do something soon. If the bond goes 20 years, we don't want to come back and do something, certainly in that time period, at all. We don't want to do something for our county facility, which we hope will last a long time, that has a short life because we can do something cheaper. So we want to build something that projects us forward into the reasonable life of that facility. So everybody would be ticked off if you came back and said, we're already full. So, and the bond isn't even paid off. So we try to project something into the future as in terms of your ability to either fill them or your capacity to add on less expensively should you see that need. We try to do that as part of our study. What we see, though, is that folks who are behind you in terms of their planning, you know, they want to do this, but they're not ready. They haven't grappled with the issue. You're already shipping your people there to the folks that are ahead of you, but the folks that are behind you will help you fill that in the meantime. We're in Omaha, so we kind of figure we straddle the river between the two states. We see the lawsuit in Lincoln at the state level. They're talking about their overfill capacity going down to the counties if they can be classified appropriately. So that's automatic fill for them. They're also saying we're so full, you may think that that person leaving your county should go to state, but we can't take you, so let's consider how they might stay in your facility longer. So if any of that trend happens in Iowa too, and I don't know why, it's human nature, you've got some use for that projected total in the near term.
And I will piggyback off on that too. I know Sheriff Crooks, when we've been doing a lot of our informational meetings, you know, that question has come out a lot. What we have always been in a situation where we're having to transport and spend that money to other counties, you know, because we can't handle, you know, the numbers that we have today. So we as a county are spending our money and giving it to other counties. If we have the ability, you know, and we're not full, we're not at 80% capacity. I know, Sheriff, you can talk about that too. They're getting called a lot from other counties wanting us to handle their inmates, and we have to turn them down.
We just got called a month ago from Hancock County to house 5 of their inmates. Well, our facility we couldn't take them, we had to turn them down. But that's just the trend around the state of Iowa, is that there's other counties out there that are looking to house inmates and get rid of some of their problems. But we will definitely take advantage of that when we can. We have to worry about Floyd County residents and our inmates first, and then if we have an opportunity, you bet we are going to take advantage of that. But beyond that, we have Chickasaw County that has a smaller facility. They look for people to house out of county. You have Butler County that has a small facility and look to house once in a while. Mitchell County and Cerro Gordo County, I don't think we'll probably ever get any of their inmates. They have standard facilities right now. So there is that opportunity, and we will take advantage of it, and it'll be something that I will definitely always talk with April with, because we will talk it over before we accept them. Do we have the room? Can we classify everybody still if we take somebody? So there'll have to be a little discussion before we do bring somebody in, but there is that possibility.
The Chickasaw County and Butler County facilities are old and small. They're in kind of the same situation you are in a lot of senses, maybe even some cases may be better, some cases may be worse, but they definitely have issues that they have to address there. And I would agree with Sheriff, probably Cerro Gordo, they've got a newer facility, it's relatively large. Mitchell, they're probably not a real viable option for you at this point. Although that is not to say they can't. If they would have, just use this analogy, if they would have a major burglary ring and they'd arrest 10, 12 people and they need to separate, that would be an option. That they would need to keep co-conspirators or co-defendants separated. Certainly good possibility that they would be in need of that. That's not an everyday occurrence. So.
Well, thank you, Delbert. You're going to stick around, because again, if there's more questions that you can help with, I appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have Jeff Heil go ahead and come up. You're next. He's here from Northland Securities, and he can talk about your tax implications. Would you like a microphone?
Yeah. I guess I'm not a bulldog, I'll use the microphone. This morning, it's interesting how I got into this business was over a jail issue. I come from Marshalltown area, Marshall County. And back in the early 90s, I still farm. I was a farmer at that time, head of Farm Bureau, did a lot of stuff for Farm Bureau Washington. But we had a jail issue come up, and it had failed 32% favorable, and was at 68 the other way. And so it went down hard. And talking about these costs, and so I was extremely concerned about property taxes. So, you know, I got so involved, I became county auditor, and ran that along while I was doing my farm operation, and really studied the jail issue, studied many things in running the efficiencies of local government. And that's how I got involved. So we went with that, studied it, really communicate, because partly was the first time failure was, you know, it was based on a facade and not very good communication. You know, everybody called it Taj Mahal. Everybody thinks, geez, these prisoners are getting this special treatment. And what we end up doing in the meantime, we closed a care facility. I came in and we did a lot of efficiency, closed care facility, partly converted that care facility into minimum security, built a maximum security new, but we went from that to a 82% favorable vote while I was auditor. And really getting down to what's the tax impact, and I can show you here what it's going to cost tax impact, but the flip side is what are we doing if we do nothing? You know, it isn't just this cost that I'm going to talk about because you say, geez, my taxes are going to go up just because of what I'll show you here. The flip side is when you throw all of the extra transportation costs, once you get a closure, I'm working with Warren County right now. We're working under a closure situation. It's chaos down there. Tell me, it's chaos. I'm working with 5 other counties right now that's in the planning process. I have worked with successfully over 20 jails since 2002. After I became auditor, I shifted into, I ran 2 terms, it wasn't because I wanted a job. It was, I went in, say, hey, these are the things need cleaned up. When I was done, I left. And then it ended up, I coming in doing public finance, working with mainly counties and cities in Iowa. But with that, jails have been a good part of my experience. And that's why I really enjoy these, because it's what got me interested, and I'm still a property owner, a farm owner, knowing what's the impact of taxes. And that's everybody you know, when it comes to a jail, you go in and tour a jail once, see what the facility is. Once you do that and said and done, most taxpayers is, what's it costing me? And the thing is what is it costing you if you do, and what's it cost you if you don't? And then you have to come down to what's best for the community. And that's what I do. You'll see in your brochures the tax impact. Could you hand me one of those too? Just so we're looking at the same one. I run these numbers for you. And when I do it, I'm very conservative. So when we run numbers, you're not going to see something a more impact than what I do. I run making sure all the costs, once like Prohaska is getting estimates, I'll run a pad and interest rates to know what they are. And then also when I ran these calculations, in Iowa you have maximum by law, you can tax taxpayers on properties 20 years maximum. This is based on a 19-year. The reason I did a 19-year is we don't know when you pass it and when we issue the bonds. It's 20 years from the day you take money to the last payment. So sometimes we can have a 20-year payment, sometimes it's 19. But if we get it priced right, we may have a 20-year. So this cushion, by doing it as a 19-year, showing it on your tax impact, it may actually come in. I would say 90% of these that I do always come in just a hair under from what we tell the public when they went to vote. So you can have assurances on your tax impact. And if you look at those, you know, we've got residential, multi-residential, commercial, and ag. And we separate them out because a complex deal in Iowa is we have different rollbacks. You know, houses, has a rule of thumb are 50%. Well, they're, 54, 56%. Ag land is 54%. Commercial pays on 90%. So that's why we have different values. But you can just see from there what an average impact would be. You look at your property and that impact from it. So it boils down to, what's it cost you? And do you believe when you go to the voting box, this impact is worth the community? The flip side is when we show you those costs of transportation and potential closure, when they come to this, and I'll go back to a question over here was, 32-bed jail. I've built a few, or helped finance, just been a handful in the low 20s. But I ran analysis numbers, and I'll tell you, 30 to 35 beds is about the break even, where you've got it for cost of scales and the number of employees and staff that you do. Once you do that, you are favorable owning that jail versus a smaller size jail. then it becomes about convenience. What it is, the smaller size, it's going to cost you more if you have an 18 to 20 bed jail. Yes, can you do it? But the cost of operation and staff and what you're doing, you could actually house them outside the county cheaper, but then it becomes staff time, security down the road. So when you're at the 30 to 35, you are at an advantage of owning that versus having a full-time transport. And, you know, I've run those numbers time and time through the years. And as you get up to 50, 60, 80, I mean, it's a no-brainer. That's why those have them. The smaller counties, that's why they are struggling. They're going as far as they can, waiting as long as they can until they're forced to do something because, you know, because it is such an impact when you put that bond issue out there. So with that, I would just take any questions of what you see as your impact, anything along that line. I put a projection of interest rate in here at 3.5%, tax exempt bond. I'm actually doing I'll be doing a bond jail on one of the issues here on Tuesday. We are doing that projected, like today's rate is about a 315. 315 for 20 years. When I ran these numbers for them, we did it last fall and then again early in January, I was projecting we were just a little over a 3% rate, and I put a 0.5% cushion on here. So we've already came up 15 basis points. You're looking at more than likely, you go to the vote now, by the time you get design, everything, you're going to go back to a bid next spring, early winter, spring. I do not, out of all my jails, I've only sold bonds once before we got construction bids. I always like to wait, you know, say, hey, should we go ahead and lock in our interest rate as soon as you pass a vote, say in August? Well, there's a lot of risk. And, you know, and the design will tell you, you know, here's projections what it is. If costs come in and you have to come back and rebid, you've only got to, by IRS code, we have to spend our money a certain amount of time, you know, within 2 years. We like to have over 60, 70% of it in 18 months. Well, if you have to do a redesign, you're talking, what, 3 to 6 months lag time and going back. And so that's one of the reasons there. So back to your question is, could we have 3.5% interest rates a year from now? Sure could. Yes? To the Fed funds? Well, the Fed funds works on short-term money. We're looking at the long-term, 20-year. It tracks with it. It tracks really close to the 10-year Treasury. Short-term and just recently, we've had a lot of our rise of interest rates has been on short-term money. If anybody's been borrowing money on short-term, you'll see your interest rates go up dramatically. But our long-term rates, our 20-year bonds, at the low, probably last September, I was running 20-year bonds at around a 2.30 or 2.40% interest. So we're about 1% higher. Short term, we've went up a lot. So we look at the 10-year Treasury much more than the Fed funds rate. Yes? $13 million. On 13 million, I'd have to do a good calculation. Well, I'll just say this is on $10 million. Well, all times I'll try to get a county to get a rating done versus non-rating, like a Moody's rating or a Standard & Poor's. With that, you'll get about a 0.25% interest rate. A 0.25% on $10 million will save $200,000 on the life of that. So if we take a half, we're going to double that to $400,000 on 10 million. So we're closer to $500,000 on 13 million, just as a good estimate. Okay.
Question is, at the end of this bond, that'll sunset.
Mm-hmm.
But we won't. Is there a way to show that on when we get our tax receipt or our tax bill that says here's what's going towards that bond and here's what's going towards this
Right. It's a good question. Of course, Gloria, in tax statements, I will say, depending on who's doing their printings and everything else, when I was auditor, we did something. We did some special printing of some of impacts like this on our tax statement. It's not a generally done thing, but is it possible? Do you do your own printing, or do you house those out?
We do outsource the printing, and you'll find that on the bottom of the tax statement there will be a breakdown. But if you go to our website, you can see the history since 2004, since I've been auditor, of what our levy rates have been. And when I started here, the county did have a debt service, and but if you look, there's been no debt service. So that's just going to go away after the 19 years is up. So it sunsets or ends, whatever you want to say. That debt just goes away then. So you'll see your general fund levy, your supplemental levy, your rural services levies, and the debt service levy. But that one will go, and mental health levy as well. But that debt will just go away.
Can you put another levy on that and have it go to the print? I would think you could.
Yeah, I
You
think
just
it's
have
on
to-
the bottom of your statements now. I'd have to look at the statement, but I think we have that. But the debt shows all of the debt for your levying authority. So if the school had debt, the city had debt.
But if they wanted to break out the jail, you'd have to do that calculation and have them put it on there.
Yeah,
It's sort of up to the printer and the programmer who does that.
But that's not the first time that we've heard that question, you know, so in some of our travels throughout the county, I've heard that before. Any other questions of Jeff? All right, thank you very much. Okay. All right, next, we've got Kirkfield and Jim Glass from Prohaska.
Do we have to stand up side by side?
No.
Jim is the talent. When I got into architecture, I thought I was a real artistic talent, but after you do this business for a while, they sort of give you one other task and they give the design to the talent. So Jim's the talent in our firm. So I can speak to the non-talent things, maybe. Kirkfield, as I said, an architect with Prohaska and Associates. I've worked in a number of places, but maybe 35 years of experience. So at some point, they figure you know enough to assist with project promotion, and maybe you can avoid pontificating too much to people about what the job is involved. But the short of that is that I've done some initial assist for the jails and other bond projects for cities and counties both. Came from Marshalltown. We assisted the city of Marshalltown with the police and fire facility, and they're under construction now. And I was involved intimately in the pre-bond, as was Jim, in the pre-bond work. So I thought Jim can talk to the design issue more expertly than me, but what that left for me to talk about is how an architecture firm gets involved at this point. I mean, clearly, if we're looking out for our own interests, we'd like to have the project to do what we call basic services after this. But you need, we realize, something like this in your bond campaign and prior to your bond campaign. There's such an education need there to get people from, I don't even pay attention to what the jail does, I don't want to pay attention, it's nothing that I even want to deal with, to I'm ready to vote for this because I have now learned that it's a real need. So there's a lot of things kind of like development, which architects get involved in. You get to a small town who has a hospital and they don't have the resources. So if you want to do small town hospitals, you've got to do development and research. So just like that, if you want a job to build a jail down the road, you've got to do something that assists folks with that. So we've developed kind of a two-prong approach, and we've done from Omaha many jail projects, honestly, and I in particular have worked on a half a dozen, and it's a similar process. We try to come in very impartially and help you develop a sense of what you really need. We put this statistics guy in our firm on this, and he does something that honestly is a neutral effort. We don't try to chase a job. We try to just help you find out what that is likely to be. It's open to anybody's scrutiny. In fact, I think the product that we've helped the county with thus far is on the county website. So we start that out with a needs assessment. The needs assessment predicts the number of beds. Everybody has input on that. And it also looks initially at the idea of this. If architects actually begin with a written document called a space program, which says each room is got to be this number of square feet. Each bathroom that is required has got to be this size. Put them all together, what does that equal? There's no design going on there yet, but what is that total? Get that total. How does that fit on the land that somebody has in mind? Just a thought, you know. When we came here, people said, we were wondering if we could fit it on this property. Let's say, since we own that corner property across the street, would it fit if we closed the street? Would it even fit? So our first task in the needs assessment was, yeah, you could take that same square footage in a single floor or a multi-floor option, you could put it on the property, and that's kind of what you see here. It's obviously undergone some finesse work since then, but in the first part of the needs assessment, we were asked to look at the utilities in the way, are there building setbacks that force you into a certain perimeter, and would it fit on the property? And then after that, we went into more of a design phase. I think we call it the facility development phase. But the purpose of that is really that you get county officials and citizens from the community to understand in a transparent fashion what is really going on there. Those folks make the decision. Those folks look at the real need. Those folks can tell you after the process that it was above board. Those folks can say, not only did we see the need, but we participated. We can tell you if we felt going into it that this shouldn't be extravagant, that we were heard. The design is or isn't extravagant. The goal of that with the Citizens Committee participation is the Citizens Committee make the decisions. We really have little or no role in promotion. We shouldn't. We don't have any credibility. But to elaborate on how the process works, we do this, these two-part preliminary phase, and that kind of culminates with your bond campaign. At that point, we really try to stay out of the public eye as much as we can, because we don't want to be promoting this. But to just explain to you a little bit how we do this, we provide graphic material if you need it. We say, well, we had this experience with the city of Marshalltown, if that's of any value to you. You go through a number of these, you realize that no citizens committee will work if it's all staff. Invariably, when you first assemble a committee, you got a lot of staff there. You say, who's going to believe you if you guys stand up and speak saying we need this? You're paid for it. You got to have convinced, genuinely convinced members of the public who say, you know, I've seen it. It's a genuine need, at least participating on that. So we try to assist with who becomes citizens committee members. And then from that point on, it's whatever you need basically, but we generally try to recede a little bit until after your campaign. But in the process you get, prior to our normal schematic design, which we would start if you had just simply hired us to do a new jail, in the process you get a fairly detailed concept. It's not supposed to be schematic design, but it's the result of listening to that full citizens committee and what they said. Gloria back there has said, we got needs in the courthouse. We can't do something for the jail and do nothing on that. So we listened and we said, okay, this might be a response to that. We brought engineers from our firm up here on one occasion to look at the condition of the mechanical facilities, and we realized the courthouse is not ADA compliant. You know, Those things don't typically affect a lot of folks, but technically you can have a lawsuit simply on the basis of perceived discrimination because you're not compliant, and there is a statute for that. There's a whole set of rules and such. So we evaluated and assisted with how does the courthouse get brought into compliance. So there's some additional things that went into this, in addition to what we did for Jeff and the jail, that we just were told, we were informed would make sense at this point. So again, Jim will go into the details of the design and anything else that I've forgotten, but if you have questions, I'm certainly willing to help with that too. You need a microphone.
Kurt speaking over here, we're having an issue trying to switch the projector to the other computer, and it was not coming on. So thank you for speaking as long as you did. Okay, there we go. All right, well, we've got Linda's laptop working here, so we'll use this image of the site. What we're showing here is the current plan for the facility based on all the months of development that we've put into this. We've actually gone through numerous options to get to this point. We did option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, 4B, 4C. And then at that point, after seeing all those, we decided to go back to option 1, ideally because it was on one floor. The other options had looked at the possibility of building multiple stories, going up to 3 stories or 2 stories. And what we came back to is that functionally it really made the most sense for the sheriff's office to be all in one level, so that the sheriff's office, jail, everything is all in one level. And so that's what you see here. Everything in purple represents the sheriff's office and jail, right here, this rectangular block. And it's been set up so it actually is the same width as the existing courthouse, which is right here. Now this existing courthouse is actually 5 stories tall. So it's even though it looks like a small footprint here, it's actually much larger than what you see over here in the purple. But it just goes multiple stories up in the air, and this is all on one level. This site, of course, the existing courthouse site, Jackson Street comes right about through here currently, and so to make this site work, we're closing that portion of Jackson Street and acquiring a couple properties over here to the side. There's a couple residences over there to the west right now. And then there's an empty lot over here as well that the county already owns. So combining those sites together, we get this larger site that allows the addition to occur. One real concern that we had is that existing courthouse is a beautiful building. It's on the historic register, and it's a real symbol of the community here at Charles City. And so we wanted to make sure that we respected that building and tried to preserve as much of its appearance as possible with the addition that was going to take place. So you can see the front of the building, the front of the courthouse faces Main Street here, and that's still preserved, and that's not being touched. There's some monuments out here in front for a memorial. That all remains in place. That's really nothing over here gets touched. That green space remains the same. And even the sides of the building, the north side, south side, will remain untouched. So the addition is concentrated over here on the west side of the property. This lighter area here you see in the yellowish color, that cream color, represents a new lobby space where we're going to join the facilities together with an open space here in the middle. And that portion of the project does go up all 5 stories to match the courthouse. And the reason for that is that we're creating new restrooms that serve the courthouse here, and they're stacked on each level, so one right above the next, so they share plumbing and everything. But by doing that, we're providing the ADA accessible facilities that are needed to serve this existing building. It would be very difficult to try to do that within the existing footprint. The bathrooms that are there are just not even close to being ADA compliant. So that does allow us to do that. We just set them over here. And this space will all be open space. It'll be a volume that goes up all 5 stories. And the nice thing about that is it doesn't affect the existing courthouse's facade right here. So when you walk into that lobby, you'll actually see the entire west facade of the existing courthouse from within that space. So we've really done what we could to preserve the appearance of this building as much as possible. And I should mention too that the budget that's been presented also includes some improvements in the courthouse here, one of which is to replace all the windows, because the windows are very old. They have the air conditioners placed in those window openings, and all that will come out, and the windows will be replaced new. So we'll return that to its original look. So it won't have the reduced windows with the little insulation panels and the air conditioners in them. They'll all be gone, and it'll look like it originally was meant to look. But just to touch on the site here a little bit, you'll see that there's some curb parking along here, along Court Street. And we're trying to use that parking to expand upon the parking. There's a lot right across the street here on Court Street that has a significant amount of parking over there, and that will still be there. That'll still remain. But we're trying to bump up that count a little bit by adding some parking along here. And part of the reason that we're trying to do that along the curb is that it preserves as much of the green space as possible around the building. So if you look at that plan, there really is quite a bit of green space all the way around here still. So we're not covering up all that grass with pavement. But this is, of course, something that has to be negotiated with the city in order to do, because that's not normal for zoning laws to allow that to happen. But it's very common for courthouses to use curb parking around their perimeter like that. Then we do have some off-street parking right over here, which serves the sheriff's office. There's some double-loaded parking here along a drive. But one thing I really liked about this plan is the way it does access both Court Street and Gilbert Street using this lane right here. So there's a little bit of parking placed along the side of this lane, but that does allow access to both streets in case of emergency. You know, if Court Street were to get flooded or something like that, you'd still have an access out to the rest of the community off of Gilbert there. And speaking of floods, that was a big topic of conversation as we were going through the designs that we've looked at. And your 100-year flood line cuts across the site right up here. And of course, this facility is out of that. But we also have looked at the 500-year flood line, which currently, based on the maps that we were able to attain, the 500-year flood actually comes right through here and actually cuts right through the corner of the building right there of your existing courthouse. But we wanted to know exactly how that equated with the actual floor elevation of this building, because originally we were planning to match the floor elevation of the addition to the floor elevation of the courthouse, naturally, just so you don't have a transition between the two. So a surveyor was brought in to take a look at that and compare the floor elevation of this building with that 500-year flood. And I think the difference was about, what was it, 10 inches, 10.5 inches, something like that. And so we decided that, since the flood elevation was a little higher than the actual floor elevation of the building, it was determined that we really want this new facility being a critical facility, being a sheriff's office. We'd like that to be out of the 500-year flood zone as well. And so to do that, all we really had to do is raise the floor level here just about a foot, and we were now out of the 500-year flood zone. And so to do that, all we needed to do, since we have a transition between the two buildings, we've added a ramp right there through this corridor and a ramp right here at this corridor, so that this facility is actually out of both the 100 and 500-year flood zones. So luckily it was a very simple thing to do, and we were able to accomplish that. So as a critical facility, it's out of both of those flood zones. Just to touch on the plan here a little bit, again, everything in purple that you see here is the sheriff's office and jail. The jail, the cell area is this block right here in the darkest color. And then in the lighter color here is the intake area. So in particular, this is the Sally port. This is where an arrestee would be brought in with a vehicle. You pull into the Sally port, the door closes, and so you're in a secure environment. And so if the detainee tried to flee or something like that, they're locked in that Sally port. There's no way out. You get in the building here through a secure vestibule, and you come into a booking area right here with holding rooms. And I won't go into tremendous detail there, but that's your intake area. This is where booking occurs, and then your access into the cell area is right through here, through this door, and you're into the cell block area. So we have steel cells wrapping around the perimeter here on the outside wall, and then the day rooms that serve those cells are right in front of them here. And you'll notice kind of a radial effect going where these walls are all at angles. And the reason for that is there's a single control point right here in the middle. There's a control station here that, so very minimal staff can actually monitor all the inmates in these cells, in these day rooms. So there's glass around that. That's a secure control station with glass all the way around it. And as you go around this corridor here, there's glass that looks into all of those day rooms. It's one-way glass. And so from this vantage point, a single jailer can actually see into every day room and to the cells for all those classifications. So that's really a very ideal arrangement that is used commonly in a modern facility. So with very minimal staff, you can monitor even the larger number of inmates that you accommodate with the new facility. Another nice thing about a modern jail is that inmates are notorious for trying to plug up the plumbing and cause problems in that regard. And so the cells are set up here so that there is a toilet and a shower. Any plumbing that we have available is right on this back wall here. And the reason for that is that there's a chase, the space that you see running around behind those cells. That's an access chase that a maintenance person can get to work on any of that plumbing from behind. So a repair person never actually has to enter the cell area. They can enter it from behind, and there's a chase back here they can walk through to service any of that plumbing that's needed for all those areas. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, one of the probably the toughest things to do with this design is to come up with a way for the inmates to get from the jail area up to the courtrooms. The courtrooms are up on the 3rd and 4th floors of the courthouse. And so how do we get someone from there to those courtrooms without interacting with the public? And that's a challenge to do with a facility like this. But what happens is the inmates can be brought down the corridor here. There's a secure vestibule right here. They pass through that. So now you're exiting the jail portion of the building. And you come right down this hallway here. And there's a new elevator right here. And this elevator serves nothing but inmates. The public will never use that elevator. It's blocked off from the lobby. You can't get to it from the lobby at all. It's just there to serve inmates and to get them up to the courtrooms. So they'll ride that elevator up to the 3rd and 4th floors where the courtrooms are. They'll exit and they'll enter a holding room right there, and they're held there in that room until they're needed in the courtroom. There's also even a toilet there, so that if the inmate needs the toilet, it's there. But that way, it's using that elevator and taking them up to those levels. They never have to interact with the public to get to those courtrooms. So that's really probably one of the most challenging aspects of getting this plan to work properly, but it's, of course, a very important part of the whole concept. That's really ideal to be able to add a new facility, a new jail like this, directly to the courthouse. Sometimes you'll see them off-site somewhere, and that can certainly be done too, but then you're transporting inmates over to the courthouse and still having to get them up to those courtrooms. So this is really an ideal arrangement to be able to do it this way.
So I will make sure there's just a few points I think it's good for everybody here, because I think most of the room today have not attended some of our informational meetings. So I think one of the things that has not been said is how much one of those options was that we looked at, which is totally, we're just going to do transport and not do anything with the current existing jail. Do you have those numbers? Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that is critical to note that people are concerned about the cost of the bond. Of course, these facilities are not inexpensive to build, but we should note that the option to do nothing and just continue with the existing jail that you have and transport inmates out to other facilities has been studied. That option has been studied just to determine what the cost would be of just using a hold and transport facility, meaning that we do a little bit of improvement at the existing jail to convert it to a holding facility that would be compliant with the current standards, but then inmates would be shipped to other facilities. And the cost of doing that is higher than building the new facility if you look at it over a 20-year period. The bond extends for 20 years, and it's a $13.5 million bond. The cost of transporting inmates to other facilities over 20 years came to $15.1 million about is what it was. And what's also interesting to note is that number is converted to net present value, meaning that it's using current dollar value. We're not inflating it based on inflation. The actual number is much higher than that. But just using present value, it's more expensive than building a new facility. And I think that's critical to note, because your taxes will eventually be higher if you just do nothing than if you build this facility. So that is a critical thing.
And we have nothing to show for it.
Right, and that cost, you'll have nothing to show for it after 20 years. There'll be no existing jail. You'll still have to transport inmates indefinitely. And so that cost just continues to go up even after 20 years. I mean, I gave you the cost of 20 years, but if you look at the cost of 30 years or beyond that, I mean, it just keeps inflating tremendously.
And I think Sheriff Crooks, I mean, the one point that you've always made, what's the most risky thing that you would do?
And transport is one of the most dangerous things that we do as deputies. And Delbert, I know, could speak on this too, but we do deal with people that at some point they don't care. They don't care. And if we're transporting to another facility, and they think, okay, now's my time. I got to get out of here. Well, when we do a transport, we should actually have 2 deputies that at all times doing transports. They say for 1 inmate, you should have 2 people transporting. A lot of times in Floyd County, we just don't have the manpower at times, and we have 1 person. But transportation of inmates is one of the most dangerous things that we do.
Thank you. And the other thing too that we haven't noted, it's part of the design aspect here. So, and again, I want to be respectful of everybody's time here today because we do really appreciate all of you coming and have enough time for some more Q&A of anybody that's even spoken. The one thing that we wanted to mention too is that we did some careful consideration about what happens when the jail is actually moved to this, the new facility, what happens to the 4th floor. And so some of the departments that we're looking at moving up there because it makes most sense. The clerk of court today is on the 2nd floor, and all of their work is done up on 3rd and 4th. So we're looking at moving that department up, and also the county attorney's offices would also be going up there. So we have looked at that. What I don't want to do is spend money on the current existing courthouse where it isn't needed. You know, we need to keep our dollars to where they are. And even after this is passed, we're still going to continue to look where we can make some reductions if at all possible. So any other comments that you can think of, I think, from a design?
Yeah, one other thing that sometimes people will inquire about, you know, what's the facility going to look like? And we don't know that yet. It hasn't been designed other than, you know, the floor plan here. But I thought I'd mention that, you know, people picture jails as kind of a fortified facility that has little tiny windows looking out, and the inmates are going to look out and see, you know, what I'm doing in my yard across the street and those kinds of things. Modern jails aren't built that way. We don't have any windows looking out from the cell block area. To bring natural light into the facility, which we are required to do, we have skylights. We're using skylights above all those day rooms to bring natural light in. So the skylights are up on the roof. So we don't have any exterior windows around here. So we can make the addition look almost any way we want. I mean, using precast panels, you know, we can make the exterior look like brick, we can make it look like stone. In this case, I'm imagining that we'd probably do something to duplicate the appearance of the courthouse over here. But again, this will all be single story, so it's not nearly as tall as the courthouse. So the courthouse is still going to be prominent, be very visible. You'll see it from all directions as you approach the site from any of these surrounding streets. It'll be very obvious, and it'll be, you know, it'll actually look nicer with the new windows. And so we will have just a single story here, and then the addition that rises up adjacent to the courthouse on its back side.
Thank you. Yes, questions?
I take it the courthouse has a new HVAC system put in it, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What are you using for that system? How you fire the boilers?
Well, it hasn't been designed yet. It's just been anticipated as we have a penthouse that will serve that, but the system hasn't been designed yet, so I really can't answer your question.
So you don't know if you're going to use geothermal or?
Well, geothermal would be nice to use, but I don't know. I guess it's something that still needs to be determined if we have enough site to do that around here to bury the system or not. It's possible. I guess, you know, we have preserved a fair amount of green space there, so it might be possible to do.
Next question. The whole area to the right of the booking, you have not really explained what that is.
That's right. Well, just to the right of booking here, this is the laundry area right here. This is kitchen right here with the delivery point here. You can see the truck parked here alongside this drive. That's backed up here so they can deliver to the kitchen right here. This purple block right here, this kind of backwards L shape, that's the sheriff's office area right here. So those are all the offices. You know, there's a conference room here for training use, and we've set that up actually so that it has access directly off the lobby. There's a door right here and a door right here to access either side of that training room. The training room has a movable wall right in the middle, so you could divide it into two spaces and just have one large space. But that's been set up so that the public would have access to it, so they don't have to enter the sheriff's office to get to it. It's a little hard to see here because we can't zoom in on it, but you'll notice there's a corridor that comes right down here to a door. So if the public wanted to use that space, they could schedule a time and then have access to it without having to go into the sheriff's office itself.
And it's an EOC.
And in the EOC, I was going to say.
Right, right.
We really wanted a good location so that we can actually have a facility for emergency situations.
The emergency management office is right over here in this area, and in an event of a large emergency, they can use this space as their emergency operations center. So it's just right, a few steps right across the lobby, and that can be converted for EOC use.
What are you gonna do with the old jail?
Old jail up on the 4th floor. I guess I don't have that image.
That's what I was talking about, though, when I mentioned that we're moving up the county attorney's offices and then also the clerk of court. The magistrate court stays where it's at.
There's some plans right behind you, Jill.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
right there.
We've got the board right here.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so we've got first floor, second floor, third floor, and fourth floor. So the question was about the existing jail. The existing jail is in this area right here. I guess it goes down to here, and the offices come back into this area. And then they do have some office space over here too. But largely that's being converted to new office space. This is clerk of court is what's being proposed right here. And the county attorney's offices are up here at the north end.
And I've got it up on the screen here, too.
And there's a little shifting that has to occur in the courthouse where we're making connections into the building. You can see this is the access for the inmates right here. When they come up the elevator, and they can access the courthouse through this corridor which spans over the lobby. And then there's also, this is a public access with a new public elevator, because the existing elevator over here, although we'll leave that in place, it's not ADA accessible. So we're creating a new elevator here for ADA access, and then the restrooms right off of that to either side. And so you can access those things with this walkway right here. And this is a stair that accesses each floor as well. So you have both the use of the elevator or the stair off of the lobby there.
Other questions?
If you take all of that area west of the courthouse, you lose all the parking. So where are the employees going to park and where's the public going to park? And the second question is, if Floyd County expands and we need to expand the jail, can it be easily expandable without, for future generations, without causing a major disruption, have to go through the whole thing again?
Exactly. I'll use this board here since it shows the site. For future expansion, if you look closely at the jail area here, where this primary corridor comes into the jail, you'll see there's a room placed right here at the end for storage. You know, right now we're using it for exterior storage to store lawnmowers and such. But the reason it's placed there is so that in the future, if you do need to expand the jail, you just take out this room, make that a continuation of that corridor, and now you can build over here to the west. Now, hopefully that's not needed for a long, long time, but at least we've tried to prepare for that in the future. Just simply expand, just continue that corridor on to the west by removing the wall right there. As far as parking is concerned, we do have the off-street parking here. This is intended for staff use, and so the sheriff's staff would be able to use this parking lot. And then we've added this parking right here as well. And the existing lot still remains also. So we have access to quite a bit of parking over there right across the street.
And the west side there too is for employee parking, correct?
Oh, yeah, this right here. Yeah, there are some parallel parking right here along that drive that accesses Gilbert.
So there's not a loss. There's a gain in the stall count.
Well, if you got a bigger jail, you're going to have more people coming to visit and stuff during the work hours.
Any other questions? And it can be of anybody that was talking today.
communications center, where's that located in that building? If that,
The communications area is right here. With a room for dispatch. There's a supervisor's office, equipment room right here, and a toilet facility as well, so they don't have to leave that area if they need to use the toilet. And there's a secure vestibule that provides access into that space too, so that's a secure area.
So that's coming out of City Hall? Have we done any cost analysis on that?
Right now, we've had the discussion, you know, but we've been trying to put some of the numbers together on just the movement of the equipment, you know, and all of that. So there's been some rough estimates been put together. But right now, it's mostly just been in discussion, talking about whether it makes most sense to go ahead and make that move, what's going to happen to the current police department as they sit today, you know, their current location is in question also. So the communications committee has agreed and approved that eventually, you know, when this happens, that they would make that move. But again, it could be one of the last things that actually moves too, you know, we could be talking 2 years out. Any other questions?
Does it need 60% pass?
Correct, correct. May 1st is the date. Gloria, you want to talk about and remind everybody about the election?
Yeah, sure.
The process?
So we've been doing absentee voting for the last few weeks. The deadline to vote by mail has ended. If you'd like an absentee ballot by mail, that was yesterday. But if you'd like to come into the auditor's office, you can vote by absentee. I brought some forms here. You can fill them out, bring them into the office, vote if you'd like to. We're open Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. Next Friday, we're open until 5 o'clock. Monday, April 30th, the day before the election, we're open from 8 till 5 o'clock. And then you can go to your polling place. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 8 p.m.
I do appreciate, again, I want to say thank you to all the speakers that did come today. This was very helpful, and hopefully everybody is leaving with more information than what you had when you came in. It's important we have an opportunity to vote. I just want to encourage everybody to vote. Get out and vote. We can't tell you how to vote, but we want to make sure that you do vote. It is important. We do have jail tours also that are continuing, and Sheriff Crooks, if you'd like to remind everybody about that.
We do have a jail tour today at 1 o'clock, and if you're interested, just come to the north entrance of the courthouse, and anytime before 1, and we'll get you in there. And I think everybody, the important thing is educate yourselves, and get around and see the facilities. And I really do appreciate the people that have come, and I appreciate the people that have come to meetings like this, so thank you very much.
All right, with that, thank you very much for coming.